The battle that would reshape the galaxy lasted only 6 hours, but every moment was recorded by cameras and sensors from a dozen different species. The footage would be studied for centuries by military academies and philosophers alike, trying to understand how a peaceful species had become the most terrifying force in known space. Admiral Yun-ji stood on the bridge of the UES Serenity, watching as her ships moved through the Void Raider forces like a scythe through wheat. The enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for generations was being swept away as if they had never existed. The breeding facility on Kepler 442c was the largest structure the Void Raiders had ever built. It covered an entire continent and reached down into the planet core, where massive machines turned raw matter into new warriors. The facility could produce 1 million soldiers every day, and it had been operating for over 2 centuries, sir. Her science officer He Jin reported from his station. The planet surface shows massive energy readings. The Void Raiders have turned the entire world into a weapon. They are preparing to detonate it rather than let us capture it. Admiral Yun-ji nodded. She had expected this. The Void Raiders were known for destroying everything. They could not keep. Their philosophy was simple. If they could not have something, then no one could. How long until detonation, she asked. 60 minutes, He Jin replied. The explosion will be big enough to destroy everything in the system, including our own ships. The other officers on the bridge looked worried, but Admiral Yun-ji smiled. She was remembering a conversation she had with Dr. Wu Jin before the mission began. The old scientist had told her that humans had learned to do more than just fight. They had learned to heal. Deploy the restoration fleet. She ordered. 12 ships broke away from the main formation and moved toward the dying planet. These vessels looked different from the warships, sleek and graceful like works of art. Instead of instruments of death, their hulls were white as snow and covered with symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. The Void Raiders detonated their breeding facility exactly on schedule. The explosion was so powerful that it could be seen from neighboring star systems. The entire planet cracked open like an egg, and molten rock sprayed into space. The shockwave was strong enough to destroy a normal fleet, but the human ships were not normal. The restoration fleet moved forward into the heart of the explosion. Their shields absorbed the energy, and their hulls passed through the debris as if it were made of mist. When they reached the shattered planet, they began to work. Beams of silver light shot from their hulls and touched the broken world. The molten rock began to cool and solidify. The poisoned atmosphere cleared. The radiation that should have lasted for thousands of years simply disappeared. Then, something that defied all known laws of physics happened. The planet began to heal itself. The cracks in the surface closed like wounds, mending. The dead oceans filled with water again. The barren continents sprouted with green forest. This is impossible, the Korthek observer whispered for the 100th time. His massive body was shaking with fear and awe. You cannot reverse planetary destruction. You cannot bring back what has been completely destroyed. We can, Admiral Yun-ji replied, and her voice was gentle but firm, because we understand that destruction and creation are simply different faces of the same power. The transformation of Kepler 442c took 3 hours. When it was finished, the world was more beautiful than it had ever been. The Void Raider breeding facility was gone, but in its place was a garden that seemed to have been designed by angels. The other planets in the system were cleansed just as quickly. The Void Raiders had corrupted 5 worlds over 2 centuries, but the humans healed them all in a single day. What had taken the enemy generations to destroy was restored in hours. But the most shocking moment came when the human ships encountered Void Raider survivors. The aliens had expected the humans to exterminate them, as they had exterminated so many other species. Instead, something incredible happened. The surviving Void Raiders began to change. The dark corruption that had twisted their bodies and minds for millennia started to fade away. Their black chitinous shells turned to normal skin. Their glowing red eyes became clear and bright. Their minds, which had been filled with nothing but hunger and hate, began to remember what they had been. Before Dr. Wu Jin had been right, the humans had learned to heal not just planets but people. The Genesis technology could reverse even the most fundamental changes to living beings. Commander Yun Ho was leading the boarding party that captured the last Void Raider command ship. He was a tall man with kind eyes who had never killed anyone in his life, but he moved through the enemy vessel Like a ghost made of light, the Void Raider commander was a massive creature that had once been something like a giant Volf, but centuries of corruption had turned it into a nightmare of claws and teeth when it saw the human approaching it expected to die. Instead, Commander Yunho placed his hand on the creature's forehead and spoke in a voice like gentle rain. "You were lost," he said, "but now you are found. You were broken, but now you are whole." The creature screamed as the Genesis energy flowed through its body, but it was not a scream of pain, it was a scream of joy. The darkness that had consumed its mind for so long was finally lifting. The memories of what it had been before the corruption came flooding back. When the transformation was complete, the creature that had been a Void Raider commander was revealed to be a member of the Altani species, the same people who had originally lived in this system. The Void Raiders had not destroyed the Altani, they had corrupted them and turned them into weapons all across the system. The same miracle was happening. The Void Raiders were being restored to their original forms. The army of darkness was becoming an army of light. The galaxy's greatest enemy was being healed rather than destroyed. "This is beyond comprehension," the alien observer said. His voice was barely a whisper. "You have not just defeated the Void Raiders, you have saved them. That is what humans do," Commander Yunho replied. "We heal what is broken, we restore what has been lost. We turn enemies into friends." The news of what had happened in the Kepler 442 system spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species learned that the peaceful humans had not just defeated the Void Raiders but had healed them. The greatest threat in galactic history had been transformed into something beautiful. But more than that, the galaxy had learned what humans were really capable of. They had seen technology that could reshape reality itself. They had witnessed power that could reverse the flow of time and undo centuries of damage. The humans had been hiding this strength for 300 years behind smiles and trade agreements. They had let the galaxy believe they were weak farmers and merchants while they built weapons that could remake the universe itself, and they had used that incredible power not to conquer or destroy but to heal and restore. They had taken the galaxy's greatest enemy and turned them into its greatest miracle. The species that had called humans cowards were beginning to understand that they had been living next to gods all along, gods who had chosen to pretend to be sheep while they quietly protected the entire galaxy from threats it did not even know existed. The question now was, what would happen when the galaxy learned the full truth about humanity? What would they do when they realized that their peaceful neighbors had been the most powerful force in known space all along? The answer would come soon enough, but for now the Kepler 442 system was free and the Void Raiders were no more. They had been transformed from destroyers into healers, from darkness into light. And the humans had done it all in less than 7 days. The galaxy had asked to see human strength. And now they had their answer, but it was not the kind of strength they had expected. It was something far more terrifying and wonderful than any weapon. It was the power to turn hell into heaven with nothing but compassion and advanced technology. The universe would never be the same again. The Galaxy Council chamber was silent as death when Ambassador Jinho walked through the crystal doors exactly 30 days after he had made his impossible promise. The same floating pods held the same alien representatives, but everything else had changed. The air itself felt different, heavy with shame and fear, and something that might have been respect. Jinho looked exactly the same as he had a month ago. His simple black diplomatic suit was clean and pressed, his graying hair was neat, and his dark eyes were calm. But now, when he looked at the aliens around him, they saw something different, something that made their blood run cold. The massive displays around the chamber showed footage from the Kepler 442 system, images of human ships moving through Void Raider fleets like angels of death, videos of dead planets coming back to life in a matter of hours, pictures of the most feared enemy in the galaxy being transformed into something beautiful. Council Speaker Vex 9 Tentacles hung limp against his blue body. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely a whisper. "The Kepler 442 system has been cleared," he said as if he could not quite believe his own words. "All Void Raider forces eliminated. The planets are being restored to their original state." Ambassador Jinho nodded once, his expression never changing. "In 7 days, he said simply. "We could have done it in 1 day, but we took our time to minimize collateral damage." The chamber was so quiet that the sound of breathing from 47 different species seemed loud. The aliens stared at the human ambassador with expressions of shock and growing terror. They were beginning to understand that they had been living in a dream for 3 centuries. Gromax, the mighty Korthic warrior who had mocked human weakness, looked like a deflated balloon. His massive frame seemed to have shrunk and his yellow eyes were dim with defeat. Your technology, he said in a voice like grinding stone, it is beyond anything we imagined. Why did you hide it from us? The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Jinho looked around the chamber at faces that had once shown nothing but contempt and mockery. Now he saw fear and confusion and the beginning of something that might have been understanding, because he said, and his voice carried to every corner of the great crystal hall, we hoped we would never need to use it. The silence stretched on and on. The aliens were trying to process what they had just heard. The humans had possessed godlike power for centuries, but had chosen to hide it behind peaceful smiles and trade agreements. For 300 years, Jinho continued, we have watched you fight and die, and we have grieved for your losses. We have offered medical aid and refugee assistance and technological help because we hoped that someday the galaxy might learn to solve problems without violence. His words fell like stones into still water. Each sentence created ripples that spread through the chamber. The aliens were learning that their understanding of humanity had been completely wrong. We shared our healing technology with you, he said. We gave you fusion reactors and terraforming equipment and agricultural advances. We tried to show you that there were better ways to live than constant warfare. The bird-like Solani ambassador spread her silver wings in a gesture of confusion. But why, she sang in her wind chime voice, why help us if you were so much stronger? Why not simply conquer? Yusal Jinho looked at her with something like sadness in his dark eyes. Because conquest would have made us into the very thing we had sworn never to become. We had the power to rule the galaxy, but we chose to be gardeners instead of kings. The implications of his words began to sink in around the chamber. The humans had not just been hiding their military strength. They had been protecting the entire galaxy from threats it did not even know existed. The Void Raiders were not the first enemy we faced, Jinho said quietly. There have been others over the centuries, the nightmare swarms that you fought 10 years ago. The crystal plague that almost consumed the Outer Rim, the shadow fleet that tried to invade from dark space. Shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. These were threats that had mysteriously disappeared or been weakened just before they could destroy entire civilizations. You stopped them, the tentacled Vorthan representative clicked in realization. You have been protecting us all along. Jinho nodded. We have been the galaxy immune system, he said, fighting off infections before they could spread, healing damage before it could become permanent. We let you believe you were winning those battles on your own because we wanted you to feel strong. The chamber erupted in confused voices as the aliens tried to understand what they were hearing. Some species were angry at being deceived, others were grateful for protection they had never known they needed. Most were simply terrified of what humans might do now that their secret was revealed. But Jinho raised his hand and the chamber fell silent again. You called us cowards because we choose peace over war, he said, and now there was steel in his voice. You mistake our mercy for weakness. But understand this, we are not pacifists because we cannot fight. We are pacifists because we know exactly how devastating we can be when we choose to fight. The words hung in the air like a threat and a promise. The aliens were beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength was not their hidden weapons or their advanced technology. It was their choice to use that power only when absolutely necessary. The silence stretched on until Council Speaker Vex 9 finally found his voice. The galaxy Council, he said, and his tentacles trembled as he spoke, formally apologizes to humanity for our words and actions. We did not understand. Now you do, Jinho replied. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? The chamber remained silent as each species considered the implications. The humans had revealed themselves to be the most powerful force in the galaxy, but they had done so not through conquest or threats, but through an act of healing. They had taken the galaxy's greatest enemy and transformed them into something beautiful. Dr. Wu Jin stepped forward from the human delegation. His white hair and coffee-stained lab coat looked out of place among the formal robes and biosuits, but his presence commanded attention. We offer you a choice, he said in his gentle voice. The old scientist activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The images showed star charts and technical diagrams and symbols that hurt. Alien eyes to look at directly. You can continue as you have, he said, fighting endless wars over resources and territory, consuming planets and enslaving weaker species, living in fear of the next great threat that might destroy everything you have. Built a display changed to show images of dead worlds and destroyed fleets, the cost of galactic warfare laid out in stark detail lore. The scientist continued, you can learn what we have learned. You can discover that creation is more powerful than destruction, that healing is stronger than harming, that building up is better than tearing down. New images appeared. Gardens where there had been battlefields, thriving colonies where there had been wastelands, children playing where there had been mass graves. We are willing to share everything with you, Dr. Wu Jin said. All of our technology, all of our knowledge, all of our power, but only if you are willing to change, only if you can learn to see strength as something other than the ability to destroy. The offer hung in the air like a golden bridge spanning an impossible chasm. The aliens could continue their old ways of war and conquest, or they could join humanity in something completely new. General Bo Ra stepped forward. Next, her scarred face and military bearing made her words carry extra weight. The human military is the strongest force this galaxy has ever seen, she said. But we use that strength to protect, not to conquer. We fight only when peace fails, and we heal more than we harm. She looked around the chamber at faces that were beginning to show hope alongside the fear. If you choose to join us, she continued, you will learn to fight differently. You will discover weapons that create instead of destroy, tactics that heal instead of harm, strategies that turn enemies into allies. Admiral Taemin was the last to speak. His tall frame and battle scars commanded respect even from species that had never seen him before. Humanity spent 3 centuries learning to be something new, he said. We evolved beyond the need for conquest and domination. We discovered that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. He paused and looked directly at each alien representative. The choice is yours. You can remain as you are, and we will continue to protect you from threats you cannot handle, or you can grow into something better and help us protect the galaxy together. The silence that followed was different from the shocked quiet that had filled the chamber before. This was the silence of minds working, of hearts changing, of an entire galaxy standing at a crossroads. Finally, Council Speaker Vex 9 spoke. His voice was humble and uncertain, but there was something like hope in it as well. How do we begin? He asked. Jinho smiled, and it was the first time the aliens had seen genuine warmth from the human ambassador. The same way we did, he said, one choice at a time. One act of mercy instead of vengeance, one moment of healing instead of harming, one decision to build up instead of tear down. He looked around the chamber at faces that were no longer filled with mockery or contempt. The galaxy called us cowards because we refused to solve every problem with violence, he said. But true courage is not the willingness to fight. True courage is the strength to choose peace when war would be easier. As the session ended and the representatives began to file out, the galaxy had learned something that would change everything. The human fleet that jumped into the Kepler 442 system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships materialized from hyperspace, like ghosts becoming solid, their hulls so dark they seemed to absorb the light from the nearby star. Only 50 vessels, but each one was a masterpiece of engineering that made the greatest alien warships look like toys. Captain Min Ho stood on the bridge of the UES, indomitable, watching the tactical displays light up with thousands of red dots. The Void Raiders had turned this system into their primary breeding ground, and their ships swarmed around the 5 planets like angry insects disturbed from their nests. Sir, his tactical officer Yu Na reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. We are reading over 3,000 enemy vessels. They are beginning to move toward us in attack formation. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of systems that no alien scientist had ever seen. Human technology had advanced far beyond what the galaxy knew, but it had been hidden behind centuries of careful deception. Let them come, Captain Min Ho replied, and his voice was as calm as still water. Begin Phase 1. Deploy the Wraith Squadron, 20 small ships detached from the main human fleet. And something impossible happened. They began to fade from existence. Their hulls became transparent, then invisible, then completely gone from all sensors. The Void Raider ships immediately began to show confusion as their targeting systems tried to lock onto enemies that were no longer there. The alien observers aboard the human flagship watched in stunned silence. The Korthik military attach who had been sent to witness humanity defeat was a massive warrior named Brock who had fought in 100 battles. His yellow eyes were wide with disbelief. Stealth technology, he whispered, but his voice carried no confidence. That is impossible. No species in the galaxy has ever achieved true invisibility. Humans have, Captain Minho replied, without taking his eyes off the tactical display. We just never told anyone. The Wraith Squadron struck like death itself. Their quantum torpedoes phased through Void Raider shields as if the defensive barriers did not exist. Enemy ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their crews never knowing what had killed them. The Void Raiders tried to return fire, but their weapons passed through empty space. This is not possible, the Korthik observer said again. His voice was getting higher with panic. Your ships are breaking the laws of physics. Our ships work on different laws, Captain Minho explained. We have learned to bend reality to our will. The main Void Raider fleet began to change tactics. They had faced many enemies over the centuries, and they had always won through overwhelming force. Now they prepared to use their most feared weapon, the consumption beam that could drain the life from entire planets. The massive beam of dark energy struck the human flagship directly. It was a weapon that had destroyed moons and turned gas giants into empty husks. The beam was so powerful that it could consume the energy of a star itself, and nothing happened. The UES Indomitable sat in space completely undamaged. The terrible weapon that had destroyed entire fleets was hitting the human ship and simply disappearing. The Void Raiders fired again and again, but each beam vanished without effect. This is impossible, the alien observer stammered. That beam has never failed. It destroys everything, even our strongest battle stations. Our shields do not just deflect energy, Captain Minho said, and now there was something like satisfaction in his voice. They convert it. Every joule of power the enemy throws at us makes us stronger. The human ships began to glow with absorbed energy. The power of the Void Raider weapons was being turned into fuel for humanity-owned systems. The more the enemy attacked, the more powerful the humans became. Yuna looked up from her console. Sir, the fleet is at maximum charge. All weapon systems are ready. Captain Minho nodded. Fire. The human fleet unleashed hell. The weapons that erupted from the human ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Beams of pure energy that could cut through the fabric of space itself. Missiles that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Gravity weapons that could crush enemy ships into the size of marbles. Entire squadrons of Void Raider ships vanished in seconds. The enemy formation that had numbered in the thousands began to fall apart as panic spread through their ranks. They had never faced an enemy like this one. The Korthik observer was making sounds that his species made when they were terrified. His massive body was shaking as he watched the human ships move through the Void Raider fleet like predators among prey. Your weapons, he gasped. They are beyond anything we have ever seen. These are not our best weapons, Captain Minho replied calmly. These are the ones we use when we want to be merciful. The battle was not really a battle at all. It was an extermination. The Void Raiders had conquered half the galaxy through fear and superior technology, but against the humans they were helpless children. Their ships exploded faster than they could retreat. Admiral Yunji commanded the assault on the main breeding facility on the largest planet. The Void Raiders had turned the world into a nightmare of dark metal and twisted architecture where they created new warriors by the millions, sir. Her communications officer Dongwu reported the planet's surface is completely covered with enemy structures. There are no safe landing zones and the defense systems are beyond anything we have. Admiral Yunji was a small woman with gray hair and gentle eyes, but she was also a veteran of conflicts that the galaxy had never heard of. She had seen what humans could do when they stopped pretending to be civilized. We are not landing, she said. Deploy the Genesis. Booms. The weapons that fell from the human ships looked harmless enough, small silver spheres that drifted slowly through the atmosphere like soap bubbles. But when they touched the corrupted surface of the planet, something miraculous happened. The Void Raider structures began to dissolve, their dark metal turning to dust and blowing away in the wind. The poisoned earth began to heal itself, turning green as plant life that had been extinct for centuries suddenly bloomed. The very air changed from toxic gas to breathable atmosphere. What are those weapons? The alien observer demanded. His voice was almost hysterical with confusion. They are not weapons, Admiral Yunji replied. They are the opposite. Genesis bombs do not destroy life, they create it. They turn death worlds back into garden worlds. They transform corruption into purity. The transformation spread across the planet like a wave of healing. The Void Raider breeding facilities crumbled into dust while forests and oceans sprang up in their place. The dark atmosphere cleared, revealing blue skies and white clouds. This is impossible, the observer whispered. It takes millions of years to terraform a world for other species, perhaps, Admiral Yunji said, but humans have learned to work with time itself as the human fleet moved from planet to planet. The same miracle occurred everywhere. The Void Raiders' greatest strength, their ability to corrupt and consume, became useless against weapons that turned destruction into creation. By the end of the first day, the Kepler 442 system was completely free of Void Raiders. By the end of the week, it was blooming with new life. The humans had not just defeated the enemy, they had undone centuries of damage in a matter of days. The galaxy had asked to see human strength, and now they had their answer, but it was not the kind of strength they had expected. It was something far more terrifying than any weapon. It was the power to heal what could not be healed, to bring life where there had been only death, to transform the very nature of reality itself, and the humans had been hiding this power for 300 years behind smiles and peace treaties and offers of friendship. The galaxy was about to learn that there were far worse things than being destroyed by an enemy. Sometimes the most terrifying thing of all was discovering that your friends had been gods all along. The news of Ambassador Jin Ho's challenge spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species was talking about the human promise to clear the Kepler 442 system in 30 days. Most aliens laughed at the idea, but some of the older ones who remembered the early days of human contact felt a strange chill in their bones on Earth. The emergency session of the Global Defense Council was chaos. President Hai-Jin sat at the head of the massive oval table in the underground bunker beneath Geneva, while dozens of military leaders and scientists shouted at each other. The room was filled with the smell of coffee and fear. This is complete madness, Admiral. Taemin slammed his fist on the polished metal table so hard that water glasses jumped. The man was tall and lean, with scars across his face from the Titan Wars, but today he looked older than his 60 years. We have not fought a real war in 2 centuries. Our military is designed for peacekeeping missions, not this kind of suicide run. General Bo Ra nodded her agreement. Her short gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform was covered with ribbons from conflicts. Most people had forgotten the ambassador had no legal authority to make such a promise, she said in her harsh voice. The Void Raiders are not some collection of pirates or smugglers. They are a plague that consumes everything in their path around the table. Other voices joined in the argument. The head of the Space Navy complained that their ships were not designed for major combat. The Army General pointed out that they had no experience fighting enemies like the Void Raiders. The Air Force commander wondered if their pilots could even handle real battle after generations of peace. President Hai-Jin listened to it all with growing frustration. She was a small woman with kind eyes and silver hair, but she had not reached her position by being weak. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the noise like a knife. Enough, she said, and the room fell silent. We are not here to argue about what Ambassador Jin Ho should or should not have done. We are here to decide what we will do about it. Dr. Wu Jin, the head of Earth Defense Research Division, cleared his throat. Everyone turned to look at the old scientist. His white hair was messy as always, and his lab coat was stained with coffee and chemical burns, but his eyes held a sharp intelligence that commanded respect. Actually, he said quietly, we might have options that the galaxy does not know about. The room grew silent. Everyone knew Dr. Wu Jin was brilliant, but also slightly mad. He had spent his entire career working on projects that most people thought were impossible. His laboratory was filled with devices that defied the laws of physics as other species understood them. What are you suggesting, President? Hai-Jin asked. For 300 years we have been preparing for war while hoping for peace. Dr. Wu Jin continued. Every piece of technology we have shared with the galaxy has been civilian in nature. Our medical advances, our terraforming techniques, our fusion reactors, our agricultural improvements. But we have never shown them what we keep hidden. The room was so quiet that people could hear their own heartbeats. Dr. Wu Jin's words carried weight because everyone knew he was talking about projects that officially did not exist. The galaxy thinks we are weak because we have never shown them our true strength, he said. We let them believe we are peaceful farmers and merchants and doctors while we built weapons that could reshape reality itself. General Bo Ra leaned forward. What exactly are you talking about, Doctor? The Prometheus Project, Dr. Wu Jin said, and the words fell like stones into still water. Every person in the room felt their blood turn to ice. Everyone knew about Prometheus, the secret military project that had consumed more money than most planets produced in a year. It was humanity insurance policy, their ultimate weapon kept hidden from the galaxy and from most of their own people. The project had been started during the early days of galactic contact, when humans realized they were surrounded by species that respected only strength. It had consumed the best minds of 3 generations and resources that could have built 1,000 cities. If we reveal Prometheus, Admiral Taemin said slowly, there is no going back. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. Every species will know that we have been lying to them for centuries. Good President Haijin replied, maybe it is time they learned what humans are really capable of. Dr. Wu Jin smiled and pulled a small device from his pocket. It looked like a simple communicator, but when he pressed a button, holographic displays filled the air around the table. The images showed starships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. These are not the exploration vessels or cargo haulers that other species know about, he said. These are the ships we built in secret deep beneath the surface of dead moons in the outer systems, hidden in asteroid fields, and behind the gas giants of uninhabited systems. The ships in the display were sleek and deadly looking. Their hulls were made of materials that seemed to absorb light itself. Their weapon systems were unlike anything in the galactic databases. We have been building this fleet for 3 centuries. Dr. Wu Jin continued, we have technologies that the galaxy has never seen, weapons that work on principles other species have not discovered, sciences that we learned from studying the universe itself. President Haijin studied the displays. The ships were beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful. They looked like they had been designed by angels of death. How many ships? Admiral Taemin asked. 5,000, Dr. Wu Jin replied, and the number hit the room like a physical blow. The galaxy thinks we have maybe 50 military vessels. In reality, we have the largest and most advanced fleet in known space. The room erupted in shocked voices. People who had spent their entire careers in the military were seeing their own navy for the first time. The secret had been kept so well that even most of the high command had no idea what humanity was really capable of, but ships are only part of it. Dr. Wu Jin continued. We have weapons that can phase through normal shields. We have stealth technology that makes ships completely invisible to all known sensors. We have energy systems that can convert enemy attacks into power for our own weapons. He pressed another button and the displays changed to show ground forces. The soldiers were wearing armor that looked like it belonged in a fantasy story rather than a military report. And we have the Genesis Protocol, he said quietly, the ultimate expression of human philosophy. We do not just destroy our enemies, we heal the damage they have caused. We turn death worlds back into gardens. We transform corruption into purity. President Haijin looked around the table at faces filled with awe and fear. The people in this room were learning that their own species was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The Void Raiders consume everything they touch, Dr. Wu Jin said, but we can undo that consumption. We can bring life back to dead worlds. We can heal scars that are centuries old. The question is, President Haijin said, do we really want to show the galaxy what we are? The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Once they revealed their true strength, there would be no going back. The galaxy would never trust them again, but they would also never underestimate them. Dr. Wu Jin looked around the table at the faces of people who thought they knew their own species. The galaxy has called us cowards, he said. They want to see us prove ourselves in battle. They have no idea what they are asking for. Admiral Taemin nodded slowly. I served in the Titan Wars, he said. I know what humans can do when we stop holding back. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for that lesson. President Hai-Jin made her decision. Send word to Ambassador Jin-Ho, she said. Tell him that Earth accepts his challenge and that we will give him everything he needs. The galaxy wants to see human strength. She paused and looked around the table. They are about to learn why we chose to be peacekeepers instead of conquerors. The great crystal chamber fell silent as Jin-Ho finally moved from his position. He had stood like a statue for over an hour, listening to every insult, every accusation, every demand that his people prove themselves through violence. Now he took one step forward, and his voice cut through the air like a blade made of ice. You call us cowards because we choose peace over war, he said. His words were quiet, but they carried to every corner of the massive hall. You mistake our restraint for weakness. The aliens in their floating pods shifted uncomfortably. Something in the human ambassador tone had changed. He no longer sounded like a diplomat begging for mercy. He sounded like something far more Dangaroo. Skromax, the giant bear-like Korthic warrior, threw back his head and laughed. The sound echoed off the crystal walls like boulders crashing down a mountain. Restraint, he roared. Your people shake with fear at the thought of real combat. You have never faced a true enemy in battle. The other aliens joined in the laughter. Their various sounds of amusement filled the chamber like a symphony of mockery. The bird like Solani flapped her silver wings. The tentacled Vorthan clicked their beaks together. The insect like Zorvak made buzzing sounds that hurt human ears. Jin-Ho waited for the noise to die down. His dark eyes moved slowly across the chamber, studying each face, each expression. He was memorizing this moment because he knew that after today nothing would ever be the same. Then, perhaps, he said in that same quiet, dangerous voice, you would like to see what happens when humans stop being restrained. The laughter died instantly. Every alien in the chamber froze as if they had been turned to stone by some ancient curse. Even the air itself seemed to stop moving. The only sound was the gentle hum of the crystal walls and the soft breathing of 47 different species. Council Speaker Vex 9 tentacles curled and uncurled nervously. His blue skin had turned a sickly pale color. Are you threatening us, little human? He asked, but his voice no longer carried the same arrogant confidence as before. I am offering you a demonstration, Jin-Ho replied, and his tone never changed from that deadly calm. Give us one system, one single star system currently held by the Void Raiders. We will clear it in 30 standard days. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Every alien began talking at once. Their translators worked overtime, turning dozens of languages into a babble of confusion and disbelief. The Void Raiders were death itself made manifest. They consumed entire worlds and turned them into empty husks. No single species had ever defeated them in open battle. Impossible, Gromax snarled, but now his voice carried a note of uncertainty. The Void Raiders destroyed the 9th Fleet last month. 200 ships, 3 million warriors, all gone in less than 6 hours. Sue. Jin grabbed her boss arm from behind. Sir, she whispered urgently, we cannot possibly make such a promise. The Void Raiders are not like the pirates or raiders we have dealt with before. They are something else entirely. But Jin-Ho did not seem to hear her. He was staring directly at Speaker Vex 9 with those cold, dark eyes that seemed to see through everything. 30 days, he repeated. Each word fell like a hammer blow on metal. When we succeed, the Council will formally apologize for calling humanity cowards. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a funeral, the silence of a grave being dug. The aliens were beginning to realize that something had changed in the human ambassador, something that made their skin crawl and their breathing holes clench shut when we failed. Jin-Ho continued, and now there was something like a smile on his lips, but it was not a pleasant smile. Humanity will accept expulsion from the Galaxy Council with no further protest. We will pack our belongings and leave this galaxy forever. Dr. Wu Jin and Admiral Tae Min exchanged glances in the human gallery. Both men looked shocked by their ambassador's words. Earth had never authorized such a bet. The human government had no idea their representative was about to risk everything on a single throw of the dice. The bet is accepted, Speaker Vex 9 announced before anyone else could speak. His tentacles were writhing with excitement and greed. The Kepler 442 System 5 planets, 3 billion Void Raiders and their primary breeding facility where they create new warriors. The other aliens began to murmur among themselves. The Kepler 442 system was a nightmare made real. It had once been home to the peaceful Altany people until the Void Raiders arrived and turned it into a factory of death. Every attempt to retake it had failed. Miserably 30 days, Human Vex 9 continued. Try not to die too quickly. We want to watch your species learn what real fear looks like. More laughter filled the chamber. But this time it was different. It was the laughter of predators who had cornered their prey. It was the laughter of beings who thought they were about to watch the destruction of an entire species. Jin Ho bowed slightly to the council, a gesture of respect that seemed to mock their arrogance. Thank you for this opportunity, he said. We will not disappoint you. As he turned to leave the chamber, his small team of humans followed behind him. Sujin was pale as snow, her hands shaking as she packed her tablet. Darawoo Jin looked like a man who had just watched his own execution. Admiral Taemin's face was stone, but his eyes were filled with questions. The aliens watched them go with expressions of satisfaction and cruel joy. They had finally found a way to be rid of the peaceful humans who reminded them of their own violent nature. Tomorrow they would watch as humanity marched off to die, and then the galaxy would belong to the strong once again. But as Jin Ho walked through the crystal corridors toward the human transport ship, his step was steady and sure. He moved like a man who had just won a great victory instead of a man who had just signed his species' death warrant behind him. The aliens continued their celebration. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. They had no idea that the quiet, peaceful humans had spent 3 centuries preparing for this exact moment. They had no idea that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology, but their ability to hide their true nature behind a mask of civilized behavior. And they had no idea that Jin Ho was not just a diplomat. He was a veteran of wars. They had never heard of conflicts that had forged humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before. The bet was made, the die was cast, and in 30 days the galaxy would learn what humans were really made of. As the human transport ship lifted off from the council station and jumped into hyperspace, Jin Ho sat in his cabin staring out at the stars. His aide Sujin paced back and forth like a caged animal. Sir, she said for the 100th time, we have to contact Earth immediately. The president needs to know what you have promised. Jin Ho smiled, and it was the first genuine smile he had worn in years. Do not worry, Sujin, he said. Earth has been waiting for this call for 300 years. The galaxy wanted to see human strength, and now they would get their wish. But they would learn too late that some wishes should never be granted. The great crystal hall of the Galaxy Council stretched high above like a frozen waterfall made of pure light. The massive dome sparkled with colors that had no names in human language, and inside this beautiful prison 47 different alien species sat in their floating metal pods, looking down at the humans below like judges ready to pass sentence. Ambassador Jin Ho stood alone at the center of the huge room. His simple black suit looked plain and boring compared to the bright robes and strange biosuits that covered the alien bodies around him. He was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples, but today those eyes were hard as steel. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he stood perfectly still like a statue waiting for the storm to break. The air in the chamber felt thick and heavy with anger and hate. Every alien eye was focused on him, and his small team of 3 humans who sat in the tiny gallery reserved for lesser species. The silence stretched on and on until it felt like the whole galaxy was holding its breath. Then Council Speaker Vex 9 rose from his golden throne high above the others. His body was like a giant blue octopus with dozens of tentacles that moved and twisted as he spoke. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder rolling across mountains. Your species disgusts me, human, he said, and his tentacles curled with hate. For 300 years you have lived in our galaxy, you have taken our protection, you have used our trade routes, you have grown fat and rich, while others bled and died, and what have you given back? Nothing but empty words and false promises. The other aliens began to make noises of agreement. Some clicked their claws, others hissed through breathing holes in their necks. A few stamped their feet so hard that their floating pods shook. The Korthic representative, who looked like a giant bear covered in metal armor, slammed his massive fist against his pod. My warriors die every day protecting the outer rim trade routes from pirates and raiders. Gromax roared. His voice was like rocks grinding together, and his yellow eyes blazed with fury. While my people sacrifice their lives, the humans sit safely on their little blue world counting their money. They are parasites feeding off our strength. More voices joined in. The Zelani ambassador, who looked like a tall, thin bird with silver feathers, spread her wings wide. The humans speak of peace and love, but when danger comes they hide like frightened children, she sang in a voice like wind chimes. They are weak and useless to us. Jin-ho listened to every word. His face never changed expression, but inside his chest his heart was pounding like a war drum. 3 centuries of careful diplomacy, 300 years of trade agreements and cultural exchanges and medical advances shared freely with the galaxy. All of it meant nothing to these beings. They saw only military might. They respected only violence and death. Behind him in the small human gallery, his aide Su-jin was writing notes on her tablet. Her hands shook slightly as she recorded every insult, every accusation. Her boss had warned her this day might come, but she had not expected the hatred to be so thick and poisonous. Beside her sat Dr. Wu-jin, the head of Earth Defense Research, and Admiral Tae-min, the highest-ranking military officer Earth had sent to the council. Both men looked calm on the surface, but Su-jin could see the tension in their shoulders, the way their jaws were clenched tight. The attacks continued for over an hour. Each species took turns listing human failures and weaknesses. The Vorthan complained that humans refused to join their war against the nightmare swarms. The Kaleri accused humans of being selfish for not sharing their advanced medical technology fast enough. The Zorvat claimed humans were too soft and emotional to be trusted with serious galactic business. Through it all, Jin-ho stood like a mountain weathering a storm. His training had prepared him for this moment. 30 years of diplomatic service, 20 years as Earth ambassador to the outer colonies, 10 years studying alien psychology and behavior. He knew this day would come when the galaxy would demand that humanity prove its worth through violence, but the worst was yet to come. Speaker Vex 9 raised his tentacles for silence, and the chamber fell quiet again. His next words hit like physical blows. The human race has shown itself to be a collection of cowards and weaklings. He declared they fear conflict so much that they would rather watch others die than risk their own precious lives. They speak of their peaceful nature, but we know the truth. They are simply too afraid to fight. The chamber erupted in cheers and applause. Aliens stamped their feet and clicked their claws and made whatever sounds their species used to show approval. Jin-ho felt each cheer like a knife in his chest, but his face remained stone when the noise died down. Vex 9 continued, even now as the Void Raiders consume entire star systems, the humans offer only thoughts and prayers. They send medical supplies and refugee ships, but never warriors. Never weapons, never anything that might put them in actual danger. The Void Raiders were the galaxy greatest terror, a species that consumed everything in their path, turning living worlds into empty husks of dead rock. They had been growing stronger for decades, swallowing up entire systems and leaving nothing but darkness behind. Every species in the galaxy had lost ships and soldiers fighting them. Every species except humanity. The humans claim they are too civilized for war. Vex 9 voice dripped with poison, but civilization means nothing when barbarians are at the gates. A species that cannot defend itself or its allies is not civilized. It is simply extinct, waiting to happen. More cheers filled the chamber. Jin-ho could see the bloodlust in their eyes. Now they were working themselves up into a frenzy, and he knew what was coming. Next, therefore, Vex 9 announced, I call for a vote of no confidence in the human delegation. I move that humanity be expelled from the galaxy council and stripped of all trade privileges until they prove they can contribute to galactic defense. The chamber exploded with approval. Dozens of species shouted their agreement. The vote would be held tomorrow, and Jin-ho knew the humans had no chance. Every species except maybe 2 or 3 would vote for expulsion. Su-jin leaned forward and whispered, urgently, sir, we need to leave now. This is getting dangerous. But Jin-ho did not move. He stood there absorbing every insult, every accusation, every demand that his people prove themselves through bloodshed. His mind was working furiously, calculating options and consequences. The aliens around him saw weakness in his silence. They saw fear in his stillness. They had no idea what was really happening behind those calm dark eyes. They had no idea that Jin-ho was not a career diplomat who had spent his life in peaceful negotiations. He was a veteran of the Titan Wars, a man who had seen combat on 3 different moons before. Earth achieved peace. He knew what real war looked like, and he knew what humans were capable of when they stopped holding back. The galaxy wanted to see human strength. Did they really understand what they were asking for? As the insults continued to rain down on him, Jin Ho made his decision. It was time to show these aliens what 3 centuries of enforced peace had been hiding. It was time to remind the galaxy why humans had chosen to be peacekeepers instead of conquerors, but not yet. First, he would let them finish digging their own grave with words. The greatest battles he had learned long ago were won before the first shot was fired.